The infinity loop is the tools of communication that heals and glues society back together. Our podcast is about disruption. We disturb the system that says it's normal and okay to communicate in the old, tired, ineffective, and unintelligent ways. There's a cynical belief rooted in so many of us in which we've told ourselves we can't help how we think or behave because our brains are so wired to react from low-level consciousness that's habitual and automatic. We're coming from our egos where they're running the show and not the infinity loop, where the ego is in a helpful place as a healthy sense of self, so it can help us be in our connected, abundant selves. We're saying by intentionally stepping into the infinity loop, we can affect every interaction we have and change the world. The Infinity Loop Group podcast is going to be about moving from the either-or to both-and way of thinking, where we transcend and include, as Ken Wilber teaches, in which we transcend the limitations of the old masculine and old feminine, but include what is healthy and helpful. What will emerge is a new, balanced, and integrated masculinity and femininity. The time has come where the divine feminine way of being is going to arise. We must learn from it as we let our old ways die, so a new human is resurrected and transfigured. That new human will truly change the world. This podcast is also about having a growth mindset, which hungers to love well while practicing elegant and intelligent self-care. We face our wounds, egos, and shadows in preparation to give this life everything we've got to make the world more connected and beautiful, because we're more connected and beautiful.
Welcome to the Infinity Loop Group podcast. I'm Riley Burns.
I'm Krista Vorse.
We're going to jump right into the red pouch. First pride, then the crash. The bigger the ego, the harder the fall. The message.
One of my very, very favorite chapters and gifts of what was given to me in this vision.
Yeah, we've already referred to the red pouch, I believe, a few times, and so this is creating that framework.
The more we remember our own failings, the greater chance we have to influence another. One day, I recalled something I did earlier in my life that hurt someone. As I looked down at my right hip, it was as though the misdeed was there, with me, never to be forgotten. Something else I'd done that I was sorry for came to me the next day. It too was there on the outside of the right side of my body. I wanted to remember it. It was a humbling and sobering gift. My sorrow over the hurt I caused signified my greater capacity to love than was there at the time of the offense. I looked again, and there was this deep red pouch on my waist with a zipper that went around 3/4 of it. It's not a small pouch. It contains all the times and ways I haven't lived in truth or love, all the times and ways I've hurt others, all the wrong things I've done, which I never want to forget. What isn't love is a powerful vision for what is. A healer that I told about the red pouch said it's actually over my masculine ovary. The right side signifies the masculine. She liked that. Whatever that means, I like it too. It's outside my body. It doesn't live inside of me. It doesn't have the power to name me. And it's beautiful. This pouch, which is invisible to everyone else but myself, is now forever with me. It will serve me. I look down and look inside and see and remember that I too have faltered like the person I see before me that I'm disturbed about. I look down and remember how I lost my way in a similar situation and perhaps won't again because I remembered. I put my maneuvers that miss the mark in the pouch. Someone said a wise thing to me recently. We would be negligent to forget. We'd be negligent to forget what we've discerned or experienced with another that would put us in harm's way. We forget our addictions to substances, behaviors, and people that cause us to keep sleeping with the enemy. We look away from the mirror and forget what we're capable of. If we feel our hearts in any way besides self-referentially, remember we talked about being self-referential is all, I'm so hurt, I feel my own pain, I'm hurt, my pain, my heart. It's so referring to the self, but it is not connection where the infinity loop holds that in inner stillness where it's, I'm in pain and where do I need to feel the empathy for the other person that's in pain? It's a different heart-centered. That's what I would call a heart-centered person, not it would be almost narcissistically feeling our feelings. So if we feel our hearts in any way besides self-referentially, when we hurt others, we will suffer. Eventually, and that's what I mean, a good kind of suffering. When we feel the consequences of how we have hurt another, that is, like you said, a healthy moral development, a healthy shame, something that will do a deep work, good deep work in us.
Well, it makes me think of the separation that we've had in society in how we connect with each other. So there's this scientist that talked about that a lot of this began with the development of the voicemail, because it was the first time we were able to leave a message and not be able to see in the person's face their reaction. And so it's like the idea of how you can have road rage in your car because you actually aren't seeing the connection of the person, right? We've all been in the car where someone makes a mistake and you understand why they made the mistake, or you hold the sympathy for that mistake. But if you're the car behind them, you're freaking out, going, "What idiot is driving like this?" And that, to me, that is one of the simplest versions of holding the red pouch. Having patience for other drivers, because we've all made those mistakes, and so I think that's a everyday example of how this can apply.
So good. Eventually, we will wake up to the error of our ways and we will gasp. Boy, I know that. Something will come to me years later and I'll go, oh my God, I see it so differently now. I see myself more clearly now and my failings. And that's why I actually say, to the best of my ability, in this moment, this is how I see it. Because I know a day could come where I could wake up and gasp and see things from a higher level of awareness to go, oh my God, that I feel for how they see it now. I see differently. If we know how to work with our own shame, We're able to face it and not decompensate. That is really the right word. That's the, then we'll talk again, the whole concept of narcissism is such a great, because it's the opposite of love and opposite of self-love. And to go, it's like if they are faced with something they do wrong, say a narcissist or someone very high in narcissism, it's like they decompensate. They cannot hold the shame because they feel so deep shame. It's, how dare you say this about me? How dare you? They will decompensate if they do not project it. And so we have to be able to have enough of a container, instead of going, how dare you shame me? How dare you say this about me? Instead of going, whoa. And, there is a place for the healthy defense. If someone is truly being abusive, right? That we're able to say, like, I'm not taking in your shitty shame.
Having the discernment to know the difference.
Because you've done your own work. But to go, wow, what are they saying that's actually really confronting me? Or like you said, accountability of looking at my behavior that I should be able to hold. So this is why we project onto others our own undesirable traits. If we faced how horrible we are at times without something to stabilize us, we'd crack and no one could put Humpty Dumpty back together again. I happen to really fond of that line. The red pouch stabilizes us. I highly recommend the red pouch. It's the color of blood. There's beautiful symbolism in that for me. It's all held in love. Our failings and cruelties are not what we have to push away in disgust out of fear of shame. That's kissing the leper. Going, I don't have to go, I didn't do that. Oh my God, there's no way. If I can't handle myself, seeing that in myself, we can kiss our own faults. We can embrace it and see it. And that actually makes our life bigger because it cracks us up more capacity to love.
Well, because it creates the sympathy for others. When we acknowledge our shortcomings, we almost don't look at other people's shortcomings as that bad because we understand that we were there at one point too.
It's like the Stoics say, and I think it was Marcus Aurelius, it's like being strict with yourself and lenient with others, being so compassionate toward others. Our failings, we wear them contained in the zippered pouch, carried with awareness. It makes us more connected. That is the line of the day. You drop into the infinity loop. You are connected to that other person.
Well, all our tools, ultimately, the goal is to be more connected, right? That this is everything that we talk about, all these words that we put into this book, put into every podcast. Ultimately, the message and the goal is how do we become more connected?
Because we are connected. True self is we are connected.
Right.
Yeah. And that is also this red pouch is a great example of the first and the second look. We can honor the first disturbance like, whoa, that person is like so not being loving. And then we can go to the second look, which is the compassionate, contemplative gaze that holds them with such compassion because we are not other than them. And we can see why they would do what they do. And the memory may come back to us to go, yep, that's how what they're doing comes out in me. It may look a little different, but this is how I overcompensate right here. It looks a little different, but if we go to inner stillness and create connection to ourselves and the other, awareness that passes through our own constricted awareness to go the eagle's vision and to look at our lives, and then the inquiry, where have I done the same? We keep in connection and we have compassion on them. And by having, because remember what we said at the beginning of the book, what we do to another, we do to ourselves. We're having compassion on them because we're having compassion on us for the same ways that we have faltered.
Well, and you can totally change the energy of a person or a situation by having that empathy, right? By not being triggered by their shortcoming, but holding the space and having compassion for their journey can truly transcend them out of this negative loop very quickly, instead of you having a negative response that just feeds into the negative loop that they are in.
And that's the customer service training. And Riley and I are developing all these courses that people can go deeper to do this deeper work. But how, as a customer service trainer, how if I always like to say with my clients, I go, we need to be giving better customer service to our family members. We need to give best customer service to every person we meet. And if you look at what is good, skilled customer service, if someone is coming at, say they're a customer service agent, and someone's coming at them very aggressively, and they're just putting all of their rage toward the company at them, when you have a skilled customer service agent, instead of going, hey, watch it, lady, don't talk to me that way, I'm not going to be treated that way, versus,
I hear your problems, I sympathize for what you're going through, let me do the best I can to solve your problem.
I can understand, wow, and you actually, it lands in your body. If that happened to me and I felt misled, I would understand why you'd be frustrated, because of the way our brains work, how they are interconnected. In most cases, the majority of situations, the person that is coming aggressive will adapt the behavior when they experience empathy.
Well, because they feel acknowledged, heard, and seen, so they no longer feel the need to have a temper tantrum, for the lack of a better word, right?
Right.
Because now they are seen and heard. Now they know you're going to be fighting for them.
Yeah, I mean, that's the major, core tactic of hostage negotiation.
Well, and then I think about, like you were saying, to our family, when we need to have more customer service to our family, because I think when we get caught up in our emotional experience, we start to forget that these people, our family, does want what's best for us. They just might not have the tools to express that. And I think that's where it's our effort to have the customer service, to give them the empathy or the space to understand that they do care for you. They just might not know how to express it.
And that's all coming, again, from the red pouch and awareness, right? Because you're seeing yourself in the other person and how you're like them. And one of the principles of parenting and relationships, that's an affinity loop principle, is the awareness of how we take shortcuts with these most important relationships in our lives. We do not use the same kind of intention and presence and awareness that we would in our jobs, of how you would talk to a customer, how you would talk to a coworker, how you would talk to your boss. We take these shortcuts and then take people for granted. We don't step into the infinity loop and become that our practice, that our standard, and that they deserve the same love and care and intention and effort that any relationship deserves.
Amen.
An alpha woman, which we're going to talk about more, I love the concept, is able to carry that red pouch. And I would also say the alpha man, in how we're going to reclaim what a true alpha man would look like. She knows she can hold it all because love holds her, and all the ways she dances in the infinity loop well and not so well. When she's aware of her pouch, no one can use it against her. Humility isn't toxic shame. I'm uniquely defective and not enough. That's the shame that we are living under as a society. That's the shame that they say is driving so much horrible behaviors. I am not enough. I am not okay. And that's also part of the small self, because the small self isn't enough. It's the ego is never enough, but trying to identify as being enough. Did you want to say something that I cut off?
No, that's beautiful.
Okay. It's beautiful brokenness that leads to our wholeness, right? The infinity loop is not the either or, it's the both and. People go, oh, we're talking about brokenness where we're whole. It's like, yes, we have a whole self and we have our broken parts. It's always the both and. That's the non-dual way of mind that can hold the both and the paradox.
What comes to my mind is the ancient Chinese practice of their china, where they would crack it and then put gold.
Oh, their china.
Yeah, where they would put, so they would intentionally break it slightly.
Yeah, what's it called?
And then heal it back together with gold and connect it all together. And to me, that's what it is. It's the both and. We're able to see the cracks and the issues, but we also see gold that is keeping us now together from the lessons we've learned from those cracks.
This is a tangent, but I was just watching a podcast this morning. It was the first podcast launch from a coaching channel. And there was like lots of money around it and polished, and everything was so perfect. And she was interviewing someone who had just a great story. He was a great communicator, but she didn't have to share anything vulnerable about her life. And it was so perfect. I was like, oh, wow, that's how you do it. And then I thought, I like the way we're doing it. I like how our imperfections, I like how accessible, we are in I would rather be a St. Francis that shows the holes in the garment and that I carry a red pouch. And because it makes other people feel more okay to own their red pouch. So
as we dive into the questions here, I
want to say the last little line. Humility and confidence, because we talked about the both and, sorry. That's the red pouch. It's love. Humility and confidence. It's love. That's what it symbolizes. Okay, moving on.
Yeah, and I find that having visualizations of these things can really ground them to our practice. So one of our first reflection questions is, what does it look like? Describe it in detail. Really get creative and imagine what this red pouch would look like for you and in your life. And I think once we really have that image, it's easier for us to have it with us and remember to hold that patience for others.
Mine is so vivid. I can just see the shades of the deep red leather.
Doesn't always work with the outfit, but you bring it with you no matter what.
Yeah, because it's invisible. I mean, that's the gift of visions, that I do have a lot of spiritual experiences. As hard as my life has been, that has been such a gift to me of how I learn and have these visions that are always what I can come back to as my grounding, teaching points for my own spiritual path. Highly recommend.
So would you say that is the ways that the red pouch helps you embrace memories of what you feel sorry for and not taken out by shame or wanting to elevate yourself in comparison, to not feel so bad for yourself? So it allows you to create all that space.
It was such a shift. I remember I was watering, it was in Ashland, Oregon. I was watering the backyard, and it was like I was going through such a deep time. It was writing the book, and I was so much presence and inner stillness, and then it was just coming to me. And to be able to go from, remember I talk about great compassion, where I would remember things, and before great compassion, it was just seen with so much shame, but to hold it and go, oh, no, this is a gift for you, and you need it. And I find I need this so much, Riley, because we forget. I forget things that I have done to other people. I forget my capacity that I behaved just like this dysregulated person in front of me. And that's the gift of the red pouch. Yes. So I'm answering your question. It is, I cannot recommend the red pouch enough. This is one of my very, very favorite tools to live by and to remind clients to come back to. If I could leave the world with one thing, may it be the red pouch.
Well, for me, this next question is, it says, what ways do you feel your faults have diminished you? And I feel like the red pouch helps you acknowledge these faults, but help you bounce into being a better person, right? These faults don't make you a worse lover. They make you a better lover because they give you more opportunities to connect with another person, right? Every shortcoming we have is another opportunity for you to have more patience and compassion for another person that's going through their own shortcoming. And to me, once we acknowledge that, we become just better leaders, better lights in people's lives, because we aren't coming from a place of better than or judgment, but a place of compassion and lifting one up.
You're not in the separate self. You're like, as a leader, this is spiritual communication and leadership development. As a leader, you're not in your separate self. You have the discernment, but your second gaze of contemplative gaze is holding the connection to every single person.
Well, and when you don't diminish yourself, you don't diminish others. Obviously, sometimes we take one step to the other, but it's easier to diminish others when you're diminishing yourself. And so to me, those go hand in hand. Once we love ourselves better and have that compassion, it's easier for us to love others and have the compassion for them as well.
And then we can do the shadow work. I'm thinking again about Carolyn Mace, who I refer to in this book, and a lot of quotes from her, who's a great spiritual teacher, does the archetype shadow work. Boy, she's so good as a spiritual director. But one of the things she says, it's, when we get in a situation, say somebody hurts us, and what comes out of us, it shows us what's inside, and we just can't stand the thought that was inside of us, that we were capable of being that resentful, hateful, behaving that way, raging that way, right?
Well, that makes me think of the apple juice metaphor that I just heard, where it was what comes out of you is what's in you. It's not a product of what someone did to you, right? It's when you squeeze an apple juice comes out of it. When you squeeze an orange juice comes out of it. You don't get upset that grapefruit juice didn't come out of it. And so it's the same thing when someone is mean to you. They're squeezing the juice out of you. That's that opportunity to be compassionate, to not freak out, to not get angry, because you don't hold that anger inside of you.
Yeah, or you have the boundary, but you go, it's so good to go, oh, that's in me. Like, that's the invitation. Oh, isn't that interesting? That's where I'm not loving myself. Oh, that's interesting. That's where my false self was dancing with their psycho-ness. That's where I was trying to get my needs met by being false. I mean, it shows you who you are. And the more you have this red pouch, I mean, it really symbolizes the true self, the infinite self that can just bring it, just hold it. What do I need to see in the world and in myself?
We don't have to drop our standards just because we've done the same, but we'll more likely be in greater awareness and sobriety when we respond if we remember our own weaknesses. When you have a strong reaction to someone's behavior, how will you make it a regular habit to look into the red pouch and see if you have also done the same behavior? And so this is the same situation of, you can have compassion for someone and also not put yourself in the situation to be abused, right? You can understand that I'm not going to judge this person, but I'm also not going to override my own awareness to keep myself into this situation where I might be abused. Because maybe, yes, I've done that before, but just because you've done that before doesn't mean you need to stay in the position of being a victim.
And dropping your standards of what you want in this life. Yeah.
Right. You can love someone and create the space so that you are not hurt by someone's inability to regulate themselves.
And you can create an invitation for them to want to do the work. That's all you can, by however energetically you work within the situation, to say, and this is why this is no longer working for me. Yeah.
And just complimenting how wonderfully you have this book laid out, I find that the vulnerability is just a wonderful segue from the last chapter of The Red Pouch, because so much of the ability to reflect with your red pouch is your ability to share that experience with the other, and that requires your ability to be vulnerable. So vulnerability, this is the great discovery. Once we discover we're endlessly invincible precisely in the depths of our vulnerability, then we're paradoxically free and we can become a healing presence to ourselves and others, which is our path. James Finley. Yeah, to me that is the biggest strength is being vulnerable, right? Is understanding, yes, there might be pain that comes from this, but I am also invincible, and the pain that comes from my vulnerability will not, it's not that it won't hurt you, but it won't define you. It will be something that only makes you a better person.
It won't take you out. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I think I want to just cap on the last chapter, and then this thing is, the introduction to the infinity loop, the voiceover part, is we say, we're moving from the either or to the both and. We transcend and include, as Ken Wilber teaches. And that is
Transcend and include.
Yeah. And that is the non-dual contemplative. It holds the both. And what is seemingly contradictions. And there's so much talk about, like, the red pouch is the opposite from, again, toxic shame, or it is absolutely the opposite from staying up at night, ruminating about everything you've done wrong. It is the opposite. It's like it's held here in great sober humility and confidence to wear that.
Well, because that's why it's in a pouch, because you can still put it away. It's something you are able to zip up, put away, and you pull it out when you need it, but it doesn't need to be running through your body all the time.
Oh, I love it. I love it. And so the vulnerability is, again, another example of the both and, right? It's paradoxical. We are going into the chance of being wounded to actually find our infinite self, which is the James Finley quote that Riley just read. It's like, it's because you're invincible. It's so, that is because all spirituality is paradoxical by nature. It's the death and resurrection. It's the letting go that brings us into greater life. So the word vulnerable comes from the Latin word vulnera, which means to wound. So when we're vulnerable, we're likely to get wounded. But the wound is our way out of ourselves and what allows grace to come in. It's most often better to be vulnerable and know you could get wounded. But that's the spiritual practice, to stay open in the presence of pain. We're enlarged, and our capacity for love is enlarged when we allow the pattern of death and resurrection, the bounce, to occur. We allow the true self to emerge. Our true self emerges from the death of the ego's attachment to the false self. That being said, when there's abuse present, there has to be a no in there. This isn't the time to be vulnerable, but use discernment. Connect to our integrity, which is our inner, like integrity, right? The holding all the parts, our inner no or yes, and walk away if need be. We're sovereign over ourselves. We're free to always say, I do want this, I don't want this. It's our choice to always walk away. To not be able to have this choice is nothing short of a cult or abuse. The late Gerald May wrote in The Awakened Heart, love may be patient, forgiving, and bearing all things, but it does not stifle life.
And for me, what really rings up is this is where so importantly is to have accountability partners, because it's so easy for us to go, oh, I'm trying to be this better person, so let me override and allow someone to maybe be terrible to you, right? And I think that is this line that we have to walk of understanding that we want to have compassion and patience for others in their journey, and also not humble ourselves to the point of being abused.
Yeah, like an unhealthy, yeah, like they're not balanced with the human, right? Yeah, not having a healthy, where the ego could serve us of a sense of self. Yeah, interesting. Our ability to handle pain, to allow ourselves to hurt and be uncomfortable, to be vulnerable, makes us strong. We develop resilience and a sobriety in the midst of all that enters our lives. We then don't need to medicate our pain or spew it onto another. Our capacity to be courageously vulnerable helps us love well. Boy, that's relationships 101, isn't it? We can stand in the infinity loop and change the world. Our world is in crisis right now in a large part because we aren't good at staying open in the presence of pain. When we realize the pain won't take us out, but is the doorway into deeper transformation and liberation, we humbly commit our lives to learn how to transform our pain so we don't transmit our pain onto others. When we know our pain can be transformed, we more likely stay open and vulnerable to the risk of pain. Oh, that would be a pushing on the pedal of, I'm just thinking about myself, because so much is one of the principles I teach with Infinity Loop kids, is, we got to be pushing on both pedals to ride this bike. And if we're only pushing on one pedal, say it's just resisting our parents all the time and only wanting our way and not thinking about the other person, then we're going to crash the bike. And I'm just thinking about, for me, when I have pushed on the pedal of trying to protect myself from pain, and it's almost it's where then the ego defenses are coming up too much, and I'm not in love and connection, that I'm just thinking I need to push on the other pedal of vulnerability to go, oh, let me come back to, you thinking about the buffalo? Oh.
Yeah, because it was talking about the protecting yourself from pain so much. And so often when we worry about protecting ourselves from pain, we cause so much more suffering.
Yeah, we become the cow that's running from the pain instead of the buffalo that goes right into it, which is the open-heartedness, right? Going right into the storm.
Being vulnerable.
Wow. And getting through to the other side, to the invincible self, which is because I'm about to sneeze, which is because it's tapping us into the love, right? The loving infinite self, because it's the access through.
Bless you.
Thank you. See, I just got blessed. That it's tapping ourselves into our bigger heart, the heart space. Then we find our infinite self, and we find the deeper connection, as we lose our own little, too much identified with the small self.
So to stay open in the presence of pain is courageous. To be vulnerable is to be courageous. Are there patterns there you don't stay open at the risk of being wounded? So it's like acknowledging when we shut down or maybe overprotect ourselves. I think about it as the massive question of men. And when women talk about men being vulnerable, this doesn't necessarily have to be sharing your feelings as much as sharing your experiences and sharing your shortcomings. I think men, one of the easiest and healthiest ways to bring a partner in is being vulnerable about the things that you struggle with, whatever it might be, as something as simple as I struggle with fast food. And by being that type of vulnerability gives the opportunity for your partner to then rise to the occasion to go, oh, they are opening up to me, and now I can use this to be a better partner as well. And I think that's something that as men, we are kind of pushing back on and finding this balance of what does it mean to be a masculine man that also knows how to be vulnerable.
Yeah, the integrated masculine, the up-leveled next stage human that's integrated with the divine feminine too, right?
Yeah. So feeling uncomfortable and feeling unsafe are two very different things. In what ways do you struggle to hold both? Being vulnerable to and risk being wounded, but made better for it, and knowing when it's unwise to be vulnerable in certain unsafe situations. Just the importance and value of discernment. Your partner is someone that you want to be vulnerable with because this is someone you're wanting to expand and grow the relationship. Maybe your boss at work isn't necessarily the person you need to be vulnerable with because they might all of a sudden take advantage of you and use that against you.
Yeah, use your weaknesses against you. Yeah,
It's
your vulnerabilities.
It's just finding that line of not everyone does have your best interest at heart, and knowing that it doesn't make you wrong because you are vulnerable and someone took advantage of you, but it gives you the opportunity. I don't think that those are lessons to shut you down from being vulnerable, but lessons to learn who to be vulnerable with. What does it mean to you to stay open in the presence of pain? Brings a kind of death to the false self, our identities, and helps you resurrect, bounce into your true self, who's beyond your identity or your wounding.
Do you want me to break that down? Or?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. So what does it mean that staying open in the presence of pain brings a kind of death to this? It does. It's like you're going through to the other side, the portal, you're going through the veil. It's like, I'm going to stay so open, but what's risking it is the smaller self that can be wounded, and we find our invincibility on the other side. And it is the doorway to the true self. It's like what feels like death is our attachments, to the small self. You see when people are really ego defended, and you could see all the fighting and the posturing and the conflict.
Like when people are attached to like negative characteristics of themselves, right? Where it's like, where they will be a shitty person or be rude to someone, and they call that like a character, like it's part of their character, instead of acknowledging that maybe it's a wound that they are projecting onto others for their own insecurity. And by you even identifying that, they now want to defend that. And as if this bad behavior is something that is so important to them that it needs defending, instead of maybe going, oh, maybe I am treating people like shit, and this is because of this other pain that I am holding on to. Does that...
That's interesting you say that, because I have seen it in some of the New Age spirituality, where it's this acceptance of character defects in a way that doesn't hold the sobriety of true, healthy sorrow. And they can like even laugh about it.
Right. It's like, I don't have to change because I've accepted who I am, as if these bad characteristics only needed to be accepted, not
transcended.
Improved.
Yeah, like,
transcended.
oh yeah, I don't apologize because I'm stubborn. And I'm like, that's what narcissists do. They don't apologize. You can call it stubborn, you can call it anything you want, and but it's not being vulnerable. And you can see where, and I've even seen it like with the whole trauma thing, and we talk about trauma a lot. We are pro healing trauma and acknowledging trauma, but trauma can also be used as a victim card.
An excuse.
And that it is like, it's because of my trauma of relationships, I can't be honest and committed and faithful and live in the light and have integrity and accountability.
Or men, I hear all the time, oh, I won't be vulnerable because this one girl broke my heart.
Yeah.
I'm no longer going to do that because of this one time. It's like,
yeah.
What?
And I mean, for me, as open-hearted and heart-centered as I am, I see where when I choose not to be vulnerable, when actually vulnerability is what would be the most courageous, loving, wise Jedi thing to do, if staying in love and going, oh, nope, I need to be pushing on that pedal more. Oh, no, getting a little too comfortable of using my ego defenses there and my self-righteousness, whatever need to visit my red pouch again. It's like, where can we live with more vulnerability? And that is the folding in, if you think the, infinity loop couples, where can you go to more vulnerability? Wow, when you treat me this way, I'm hurting right now, honey. It's like, it's going to elicit again, like what we talked about, in the last chapter, their response, their compassion, because you are moving toward vulnerability. But sorry, you're going to say something, and I want to answer the question more.
It moves on to the next question. Even what you're kind of saying is, how will you use this to embrace being more vulnerable as the doorway to your liberation from yourself? What cues will you give yourself to stay open? Mm-hmm. So like you were saying,
I can feel it.
As you feel it closing up, what are cues that you use to remind yourself to stay open?
It's so funny. We have our little
buffalo
that somehow Amazon sent to me by accident. I thought a client sent to me because we eat buffalo meat, and she's a carnivore. I'm like, you sent me a bunch. No, so Amazon accidentally sent me this fabulous buffalo. But how this remind, like, what I want for my life. Okay, I want to go out of this world where someone can say, well, she finally learned how to love well. Mm-hmm. Like, I want to go through the healthy ego dissolving so that that I live more from my infinite self. That is my path for this world. And then whatever.
So your cue would be to remember the buffalo? Is that what you're saying?
Remember the buffalo, yes.
It's like, when am I not acting like a buffalo?
Yeah.
And that's like your cue to keep
remembering. Where am I being the cow?
And it's,
oh, wow, that's sort of almost weird, because you think about the cow pose in yoga, yes. And it's almost like this sticking up with your back. It's almost like an ego posture. Weird, like the cowardly ego posture. Like, I'm just going to, posture this way. And then you see like the buffalo and you're like, look at that guy. But
well, he keeps his head down and keeps pushing.
Yeah, and going, okay, if that's what I want for my life as the iteration of Krista, if I want to dissolve into love, then that's my doorway through. It's not about needing to protect my fragile little ego self because I have a red pouch. Whatever they say, I can handle it. I'm not going to decompensate. I have an infinite self that can take care of me. I can go in and love more courageously, and it will cause me to go through the veil, leaving behind my little wounded false small self to live in this infinite self that's just this field of love. If we can live in paradox and go, what? You go toward wounding to find the invincible self? Yeah, that's weird. It's like, so what are my cues? My cues would be when I can feel that ego energy, that is when the ego is not in a healthy place. And I heard this is a segue, but it's so good. I didn't get to tell you this. It was talking about the dragon, because we're going to talk about it, and how I've seen the dragon when like someone was coming at me with their dragon energy and I was just taking it. And then it was like, oh no, Krista, you have the fire to breathe on that and defend. It's like when the dragon is when the ego's in the bad place and the dragon is like taking everything out, versus when the dragon is in the healthy place and it's defending what is precious in a beautiful way of setting back. Like, oh, no, we're putting that energy back there. But this is different because everything is this nuance, right, of how we work with this different energy of what does it mean to love well while practicing elegant and intelligent self-care. It's when I can feel that I can sit there and go, it's coming back to the infinity loop principle of connection. It's like putting my hand on my chest and my heart space and going, I just want connection with you. I just want to love better and love myself. I want you to hear this so that we can have a better relationship. That is vulnerability. What do I want underneath all the pain? I'm just in so much pain right now, and I'm going to go to the gift of tears instead of taking out my rage. I feel powerless. Like there's so many cues.
Well, for me, I like the metaphor of like being a knight and taking off your armor, and that's being vulnerable. And someone still shoots an arrow at you without any armor on, and it hits you, and it doesn't pierce you though, because you finally realize you are invincible. Right? You have no armor. They hurl their negativity at you, their degrading version of you, their vision that's supposed to break you down. But in your vulnerability, once that arrow hits, because it does not stick, because you have found that love of yourself to have the strength to be vulnerable, then you find that invincibility. Then you start realizing everything they just threw at you has nothing to do with you. Now you can be the light to have compassion for them, to have sympathy for them, even when they just tried to hurt you in your vulnerability.
Because they don't know they haven't found their red pouch that can hold their own shame, so they got to put it on you.
Yes.
All their frustrations, all their things, and one of the things I remind myself of when I see somebody, I'm like, you know what? I've like made my life's work studying these things. They maybe haven't. So I may know a few things they don't know. So I go, it's not their field to know all these things, right? They're busy doing their thing of what the gifts they're bringing into the world. So it takes us to be the change we want to see in the world. Right? It takes, and so we're going to get more and more into this because the visions just kept increasing about the dissolving to where it is how we dissolve, and the vulnerability to be wounded. Oh, it's so, so beautiful when it is done with elegance and intelligent self-care at the right time in the right way.
Thank you for being vulnerable with us, Krista.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for joining us again on the Infinity Loop Group podcast. Please share this, give us a thumbs up, take the time to listen to it, and we look forward to seeing you again next time. Have a great day.